So anyway, I'm all, really? Are you fucking serious? So Craig's all, yeah, man, dude, we'll keep you posted. We don't know what's up. And literally 2 or 3 months go by where I never even saw or heard from him. So yes, I didn't have a band for not wearing spandex, and I stole Bo Staff's beer.
You double fucked yourself.
Yeah, right. So then I get in this band called Phantom Black, which is some local kids around the area too, and they're at least like Black Sabbath and metal. So I'm like, we all got long hair and we look cool. And then I'm by this time I'm staying in Fremont with my mom who lived out there, and I'm going to continuation school in Hayward. So Rob, Craig, Bo Staff, I guess, talked and said, hey, let's get Matt back in the band, right? And I guess it didn't work out the other direction they were going. So I'm getting off BART one day in Union City, where I would get on another bus to go to Niles, where my mom lived, and Rob Flynn comes running up. I'm getting off BART, and I guess they knew I caught the BART, so they were scoping out, like waiting for. No one had my phone number. I guess they couldn't get a hold of me. So Rob,
cell phones, you know.
Right. They were just odd. So Rob comes running up, dude. Can you be in the band again? And like, you're in. That's it. And the next thing you know, I get back in Bo Staff's van, and we shake hands, and everything's cool. And we go back to over where I was playing, and I play with Paul for the first time. And I could tell he was like, I only knew like a couple of a couple copy songs, and I couldn't really freestyle. I couldn't really do a lot of stuff at that time, man. And next thing you know, I'm in Forbidden Evil. And they're like, dude, we're playing our first show in 2 weeks. With
way.
Suicidal Tendencies. Just lined up, check it out. No, it's Laws Rocket headlining. Suicidal supporting, Legacy's last show.
Yeah, well,
as Legacy.
Scottish Rites
Temple.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was my first gig 2 weeks before I got in the band 2 weeks before that. So anyway, they're like trying to teach me the songs, man, and I remember and there was another story to this too about conniving in where I would run into Rob Flynn and tell him about my audition with Metallica, and I kind of used a lot of hyperbole on that because I really never got in the door. I just stood in the line, So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Because there was 30 people that did get tried. Greggy got a try.
Yeah. No, I was there.
There was a bunch of bass. Willie Lang.
Yeah. No, I was there. It was at Hayward rehersal spot.
Yeah,
remember that?
That's where Legacy practices.
Yeah. So I
told
the guys, yeah, man, I tried out for Metallica, but wink, wink, and I'm all. Meanwhile, because I ran into Rob. This was so actually, to summarize, that was after they kicked me out. I ran into Rob Flynn again on the bus, and somewhere in, I can't remember if it was before or after, where I was, telling him like about the Metallica audition, and dude, yeah, like, I could play this kind of stuff and this riff and that. So when Rob, now flash forward when I'm back in the band, and they're trying to show me the songs, Rob's all, dude, man, I thought you said you were good. Like, he's all like, I'm all trying to learn the riffs and stuff. And I just remember Rob's look on his face. And so that's just kind of fun, like how I got in there not really knowing how to play the songs, man. It was pretty funny.
Okay, so how was the first gig then? I mean, was it...
Well, in metal, you could really kind of fake it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, I mean, on our side, not you, Zetro, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't get to fake it.
Well, I had the long hair, I could cover my face, but everything was so loud. If I'm trying to play Chalice of Blood, it's all digga 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 digga. I'm missing a lot of those notes, but I'm not louder than the guitar.
Right,
so it's not. So I'm not solid, but Bo Staff holds. Yeah. Well, that I could say a couple times I've done that too.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
At least he admits it.
No, I even played a show in Germany one time, like a whole step off of tuning.
Oh no.
Yeah. No, man, it was. I got some stories.
How do you not hear that,
dude? It was like I was going up to the amp and like the every song and like, what's up, and it was like half the set, but man, and Glenn's all, you stupid, like Glenn Avalize, like, anyway. I had no clue about tuning and all that kind of shit, right? I had to use a tuner all the time. And you know how stuff's a little different in Germany, or if you're renting gear from somewhere and suddenly you're like looking at a different tuner and you think like, but then you're playing live and it's like, what the fuck? Make sure the bass is turned down so no one hears it. When I'm headbanging, I look cool, like, right?
Right, exactly.
You remember some of that, the early days, because our first big tour was with you guys.
Right,
So yeah. I did end up getting better playing, but the first years were when we went in to do Forbidden Evil. I'm surprised.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Did you play the tracks on Forbidden Evil?
I did.
Or did they have to be?
In
a lot of cases,
I know
the guitar players will come back and go, like, give me the bass.
Well, there's always a few little parts that Craig or Glenn or each of the record Sims or Craig had to grab my bass, and this is always frustrating. For some reason, they let me play on the records. They probably would have sounded better without the first two records. Although the first one's got that naive, just, it captures the moment, even though the bass is kind of out of the pocket a lot, but it sounds cool. It captures the moment.
I think it sounds
But
great.
they did let me play on the records, and I did cost them a lot of studio time. So after the second one, they're like, dude, you got to move to a pick. Like they kind of convinced me on that. Somehow they let me play, but like there's parts like Eyes of Glass, for example, where there's this like real technical picking part where Glenn played it, so like I couldn't get it, and I'd be sitting there trying, punching in and out, like on hitting the parts, and they'd grab my bass and play it fucking perfectly,
right?
In first take. Because I know like Gary and Rick did that for
Robbie.
Rob.
We had Robbie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff Robbie got fixed.
Yeah.
In fact, to be honest, in '90, when we were doing Impact is Imminent, he couldn't actually play his tracks. He was actually, unfortunately, got sent home, and Gary actually played his tracks on them, and then that was the last record for Robbie. So maybe that's why.
No, that actually happened to me too. Like when it got real serious, and I always talk about this with players, man, because it was by me by default walking into that situation with Forbidden Evil where I kind of connived my way in by saying I was a little better than I was, and then being embarrassed because Paul shaking his head or Rob and Chris, you know what I mean, and you're like sitting there, you're like sweating, you're like, that's when you don't think about, you're not thinking about the music, the feel, you're thinking about because thrash metal or metal is so 16 notes for so I'm thinking technical but not the music, so I'm not listening and I'm trying to get the parts down, so it really kind of like that's what was great about coming back later in life when I didn't have the hang-ups as I had as a kid.
You mean the Omega Wave?
Yeah, the Omega Wave period, right. And it was like suddenly music opened up again and I could suddenly play because I wasn't thinking about like, oh man, Bo Staff's going to kick me out of bed.
Oh God.
Yeah. Like,
I'm going to go in the dressing room and these guys are just going to say, you suck tonight.
And it did happen.
What the fuck were you playing in this song?
Right, exactly. And I ended up getting kicked out of the band. For right after Twisted Into Form, there was that period when we were trying to get off Combat, and we actually did these demos. I know they're out there bootlegged, but it's totally like we went from playing thrash metal to a lot more like Queensryche influence. The stuff never came out, and we kind of scratched it and then went in the direction of Distortion and Green. But I went in the studio. It was Paul Bostaff's last recording with us, and I couldn't play the shit. I was like trying to hit, I didn't prepare. I was too busy partying, having hella fun. And I was like, I took it for granted, man. And I like just never really, but that was the end of that, Luckily for me, after I got booted out of the band, it just felt right for me to come back. It was like a temporary couple-month thing. And then Bo Staff said, I'm going to help him on work. And I started taking lessons. And then from that day forward, I was contributed a little bit. But I played on all the records.
You didn't write anything, though, huh?
Well, not on the first two records. But the only thing I ever wrote was a riff here and there, And it was those guys are cool enough to give me, like, song credit. Like, if you contribute a riff, or a name of the song, you're on.
Name of the song. I don't know about that, but
I mean,
the riff,
or not. I mean, I never did the name of the song. Dragging My Casket actually was like my idea, and Craig gave me some like writing vocal credit. I was like, oh, dude, thanks, But no, it was really just like later on I started contributing riffs, but still Craig and.
So you wrote some stuff on Omega Wave then?
Yeah, a couple riffs here and there.
You did.
Yeah, I
contribute
think
to
like
that.
4 songs.
Good.
Yeah. So
That was a great record.
Yeah. And but then it was weird because I still when we came back, the all those like hang-ups I had where I was a little nervous to kind of like mess up. Yeah, I was more, but now I was like, I'd sit in the same room with Craig or something like that and not even trip, like right. I did. I mean, I had this because they were always like, dude, you got to play. And I'm surprised they even let me play the shit, but I was just always like, it just came a lot easier later. But all that being said, the weirdest thing was I got back into playing music with in 2008 when we all were doing the reunion stuff.
You had done nothing in there at that time.
Yeah,
other than the reunion for Chuck Billy in that area,
nothing.
There was nothing.
Yeah. I went back
right?
to college. I went back to school, got married, had kids. Thought, I actually became like I was rarely seen. I would go to some big shows, see Craig once in a while for literally about 10 years. Once all the metal was dead, I remember when Nirvana song came on, killed us. It was like the next day.
Us dead.
Boom. It was like the weirdest thing. Because you were,
dead.
Yeah.
I was living off the business. Within a year, I was working a job.
Yeah.
That's how killed it.
It was amazing. Wasn't that weird how that was?
So
you
fast.
Could pinpoint that.
One year
time.
we were at Foundations Forum, and it was us, Priest, Scorpions, Pantera playing. The next year it was fucking Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, just all these different.
And then came like some of the New York hardcore and Korn and stuff, and then
wild.
Then metal was just a bad thing for a while. But it was funny because like we were doing Distortion and Green, right? And or it was actually right before that when this is around when Nirvana came out, but
it's about 93.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like we had Rick Rubin. We were talking to Rick Rubin. We were talking to RCA was starting to, but they had tons of money behind them. So this was the tail end, and I'm glad we got to live a little of it. The tail end of when the record companies had money. And used to like wine and dine you. And,
believe me, I lived all through
that.
I lived all through that.
Spending $50,000 on a record that we do now for $5,000. You know what I mean?
We spent $275,000 on a record.
Yeah. So,
believe me. So we wasted. I mean, correct that. Right. Wasted $275.
Yep.
We flew to England.
Yeah, exactly.
Set up a flat, 2 flats for us to live in for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Recorded at Battery Studios where famous records were done. Locked out the studio. Yeah, dumbasses.
Yep, exactly. So it was the tail end of. So it was kind of like the expectations of what we had. Because we were being wined and dined for a couple of years while we were getting released from Relativity, and I remember we were playing a show and all the labels were there, and the RCA brought us up. They're like, "Look, here's $250,000 advance, for us." We're like, "Whoa," and 5 record deal or whatever it was, and they get up and leave, and our manager and our lawyer are there. They're like, now, we're not going to sign this one. This is already months. Don't sign this one yet. We still got to meet. And literally the next day, I remember "Smells Like Teen Spirit" came out on MTV, and like the next week, all of those record deals that we had were suddenly gone.
Yeah.
It was like all of a sudden, like the record companies had a meeting. Let's shift direction. Remember
it was like they ripped Headbanger's ball off, and then shortly they put this show on called Super Rock, and it wasn't with Ricky Rackman anymore. And they played some metal videos, but then they played some alternative videos as well, and it lasted for about 2 or 3 months, and then it just got wiped off the face. There's no more. They stepped down, went that fast. Gone in an instant.
Yeah, and then everybody started kind of breaking apart, and I think Testament was like the only one that kind of kept going.
They went death metal, if you don't remember. Demonic and Low were all pretty much death metal records. Pantera were the only ones that were doing any numbers, and like Cannibal Corpse or any of the death metal bands were staying alive. Slayer, I went and saw Slayer in the city at a little club called the Trocadero, maybe 600 people there. And we're talking like 98, 99, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it was weird watching that change.
If you weren't Limp Bizkit or you weren't Korn or you weren't Rob Zombie
exactly.
or you weren't something like that, then you weren't getting, nobody gave 2 fucks.
well, that was what was weird too. Was here we are. I always thought Forbidden Evil stayed together a couple years longer than we should have because, we just didn't want to break it up yet. And when we did, we started Man Made God, me, Craig, and Steve.
Right.
But what happened was we were writing this as we shifted back to metal. I mean, we were doing Distortion and Green, which were like didn't get any credit or no hype at all whatsoever.
Nobody wanted to hear it.
And then like later when we came back, those records are the greatest freaking thing, way ahead of their time, and it was like it was
it's not helping me now,
nothing
honey.
in the States and it was crazy because I remember walking away from Forbidden the first time for this is like 96 or 97, somewhere around there. And we were, going to Europe, coming home with no money. And we just recorded Green, which I thought was a really good record. I actually like the bass. I was so happy with my playing on that record and everything. And it just, the label was like, you know what I mean? When you get that sign, you're like,
no.
What? And so it was like just totally turned it off. So we're like, I think we did like maybe a one quick Europe tour or one quick US tour. And then when I walked away, we played in front of like 200 people, maybe. And like in Sacramento or something, maybe even less. And then fast forward to like, hey, Bo Staff calls us out of the, hey man, I was just in Europe with Exodus. And, and he's like, everybody wants to see Forbidden and stuff. So we entertained the idea, but when we did those tours, next thing you know, we're playing the main stages at Grass Pop and the main stage at Brutal Assault and the main stage at Hellfest, which is kind of a weird thing to be a funeral director one day and walk in and do that. It's just like, meanwhile, I'm back at home the last 10 years working at a cemetery, going back to school, the kids and all that kind of stuff. So that was that period of time.
Now you were in Man Made God for like a minute, for not too
for about
long.
almost a year.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of like it started feeling right to let go of Forbidden because that meant so much to us. Like when they booted me out of Forbidden, I was bawling. I was like, no, like back in the day, it was like everything to me. It was like my life. We all lived and breathed this shit.
Still do.
So, but it took a couple of years for us to kind of like, like let it go. And, our personalities we started hating each other.
Oh, that's easy.
Dude, it was like.
It's resentment. It's not hating. It's
dude, I could recount a couple of fights me and Craig got into that were like knocked down, almost fucking brawls, like in a restaurant or like fighting over stupid shit. And Tim, our guitar player at the time, God rest his soul, fucking, was at wit's end. And Steve Jacobs, our drummer, was always like the kind of sit in the corner where we're just yelling and arguing about shit because we're all bitter and pissed off, And so it was kind of running that course for the last year of Forbidden Evil. So we were finally talking about, I was starting to come into my own and playing too. So I was like, ooh. And I was thinking about doing something different. And then me and Craig and Steve, when it all fell apart, started with Aru Luster, who was a Machine Head for a while, and El Nino now, started the band Man Made God. And it was like, look for the singer Mike. But man, that was a whole nother thing where I was kind of worried about, I remember, dude, I'm like 27 years old or 29 and I'm uneducated completely because I'm a high school dropout. I have
nothing to fall back
I've
on.
never had a job. I mean, besides working in a deli or something, and I didn't know what to fucking do. So I was losing that passion that I happen to have back now. So I'm so happy about, but the freaking passion for music that you have to be a little obsessed to be in this business, you have to have a dream. You know what I'm saying? You got to be a little obsessed with everything. Everything is, I'm going to pass out 1,000 flyers tonight. I'm going to make these calls. I'm going to do this. Everything is the band. Nothing else matters. And that stuff you lose, man.
Yep.
Where it was like, now I'm worried about a job. Now I'm worrying about like, I want to, have kids. My wife's pregnant. It's like, oh shit. So I started tripping on that. And so that so when we went to play, and it was kind of trippy because I was at the same time coming into my own playing wise. So I was like really, I could have made that next step. You know, I was starting to do different techniques and things like that. And Craig and Steve would be like, oh, wow, this is cool, you know. But then at the same time, I was seeing the same old shit. Like our singer was a heroin addict. Oh, so it was so unreliable. And we're like, oh. So it was kind of like it was a bitter kind of thing on the way out, and I kind of stepped away. And then in about 6 or 8 months, I got a really killer singer, and shit happened for those guys. You know,
that was it until Omega Wave.
That was it. Yep. That's when I went back to school full time. And what's crazy is I had this, when I decide I'm going to do shit, I just do it. You know, and multiple times in my life, if I set a certain goal, man, I make it happen. And I said, man, I'm going to be an attorney. So I went all the way the steps and almost made it until like, you know, went, you know,
so you're not an attorney.
No, I'm not an attorney, but I'm saying I'm going to take all the steps to go there in that direction. You know, so I went to school for 7 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, as a high school dropout, and went and I got a bachelor's degree in like law studies at St. Mary's. And took the LSAT, and then applied to USF, Golden Gate, Kennedy, got in those schools, and then suddenly the Omega Wave stuff came back around. I took a step back when I set my mind, what I meant is when I set my mind to something, I don't necessarily follow through all the way to the end, but I figure out if I'm going to do it or if I like it or not. Because when I made that, because back in the day, the attorneys had they made all the money and all the decisions while we were like, what the fuck? We're like, so it was just like, you know, so I got in it to kind of, it took me that time to figure out that's not really what I would have excelled at and what I would have been good at. So I was kind of just in it for the wrong reasons, you know, just to kind of wear it on my sleeve, you know. So I went all the way, and then, you know, just didn't want to go back more into that debt and stuff like that, even though I got accepted in school, did very well on the LSAT and stuff like that. Yeah. So boy, it was crazy. Like after Man-Made God, you know, Forbidden Evil, Man-Made God wound down, I was like, man, I can't even spell. Like so I'm like, I'm gonna go back to school, and then I always set my goals high. So I was gonna be an attorney and stuff, you know. So I went through night school and working, and so everything I did was at night school. I was doing probably like 3-4 classes every semester, going all the way through summer. So I have my eyes set. I go, man, I'm going to be an attorney by the time I'm like 35, 38, you know. So I'm like, I have all these goals set for, right? And so anyway, meantime, I have to have a job. There's like, so one of my friends, there was this band called Level, who was Paul Perry, his bass player, my cousin and roommate. His guitar player was like, hey man, like, dude, I just remember the day. I don't know if when this ever sat in on you where you're like, fuck, now I got to get a job, because I know our story. I was
in the union for 20 years. Remember?
So I mean, so it was like, you know, you're suddenly this lifestyle you've had of going to practice at night, going to the bar, drinking, sleeping in, you know, then you go to band, you can do it all over again. Those days are gone now. You're like, oh, so I
never had those days coming on. I didn't get it until Exodus paid my living from 86 to 93.
Yeah.
I didn't get those days. My father had us working. I always worked a job since I was 13. So, and I wanted shit.
Right. It was never
cars back then, and the only way to get them and pay for gas, because I had a mean old bike dad. It was not giving me anything.
Yeah.
So
I didn't have that. Yeah, I was like, I just got to keep my rent, and I got to be able to buy beer. So we could have chicks come over.
Right.
And that was like
for fucking studio rent for practice.
Yep, totally. And, you know, still we were working. Somehow the band was, you know, still paying for that at the tail end. But anyway, as after all that went away, I was like, I went and I got a job at Pizza Hut delivering pizzas, dude. I was so depressed because I was like, they're like, put the hat on and wear the shirt. And I was like, well, I didn't want to wear a uniform. You know what I mean? So it was like,
you just want to deliver pizzas.
Yeah. I was like, I'm already like, this is like my, you know, I didn't come to terms with it yet. And now I look back on that, and I wouldn't be ashamed to work any job. You know what I'm just saying? I mean, that was just where I was at.
Like this bass player.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Right. Exactly.
Now you're drunk.
Yeah.
You're going to show up to a heavy metal party, and they're going to go, no way.
Yeah, exactly.
You're playing Forbidden.
Exactly. So your cycle at that time, it's like a big thing. And now you just kind of laugh at yourself for even thinking that way back then, like, just thinking you're more than what you were. But, you learn as you grow older. But anyway, my friend shows up and he's all, dude, he goes, hey, man, why don't you come with me? I'm going over to this house to sell a mausoleum. And I'm all, what? He's all, yeah, I sell crypts, man. And he's all, I'll give you $1,000. Just come with me. Hang out. I make tons of money. Anyway, we go to this guy's house. He's not even home. And the next thing you know, I'm like, dude, buy a shirt and a tie. I'm putting you in our sales training thing. And I'm in this kind of like one of those, it's total sales environment, which I'm not in now. I'm 22 years in this business. But when I started, it was, they hired all these people and they go out and they sell their family like plots or graves.
Right.
And like then the unit managers make money. Dude, that's how I got in, right? But what happened was no one so I get in there and I'm like, I have a long ponytail that goes all the way down my back and I'm wearing a shirt and tie and I'm like, here's a family that called in for some information. Go to their house. And like, dude, it was hilarious, just to say the least, right? So I go to quit, and I'm like, now I have sales experience. I can go to Guitar Center and get a job because I'm a musician, and now I finally got some little experience. And I walk over, and they're like, I'm all, hey man, I'm gonna quit. So they're all, and I'm all, here's the appointments I set today, and I handed them like a pile, like about 10 leads, right? Because no one told me that making phone calls sucked. I was this naive kind of kid, like, just following a script where, most people get on that shit and can't even freaking do that stuff because they're like, and I had no fear, no nothing,
Right.
So I was like laying up all this stuff and they're like, whoa. So what happened was they decided to make me their telemarketer manager. So I had like no experience in management or nothing. Go ahead and hire people. We got a budget. So next thing I'm telemarketing manager, I hire like 4 people. Then I'm going over to other cemeteries because it was a corporation of Chapel of Chimes and Skylon up and some locations on the peninsula, Napa, Sacramento. So now I'm going over to other cemeteries and training their sales force. So, and then, in the meantime, I'm going to school at night and then my girlfriend at the time gets pregnant and I'm going to get married. So I go, man, I got to step away.
What year is this, Matt?
So this is like 97, 98. Or oh no, she gets pregnant in 99.
99.
Because my son was born in 2000. So, but Forbidden had already broken up by 97. We're living together. I'm with this girl. I'm, not doing a band anymore.
Right.
I'm telemarketing manager. I'm going back and forth to training these people. I'm learning the sales environment. And
are you making decent money doing this?
No, I think I was like on a slight like $10 an hour with a little commission hit, which never really panned out. So I wasn't making enough money. And I saw these other people that were in the actual sales part, what was called family service, where you actually worked in the cemetery and met with families when someone passed away. They were all driving brand new cars and living middle-class lifestyles in the house. And that's what I wanted. So I got my way in. They're like, Matt, you're going to have to cut your hair. So I started with the bob. And I went out, so.
It's gotten
short,
over the years.
So I went shorter this way and that. So
the ears have lowered over the years.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. But what was trippy was there was this whole. So I started at this place called Chapel of the Chimes, which is they do, 1,800 burials a year here in the East Bay. So real fast moving place. Mission Boulevard in Hayward. Yeah.
Many times.
And then they also have one in Oakland
Right.
in front of Piedmont.
Yes.
And so I said, hey, I need to get into what they're doing because I need to support a family and I want to put myself till I get through college till I'm a lawyer. I'd already I'm going to be an attorney.
I'm an attorney.
Right.
I'm going to be out of the dead.
Exactly. So anyway, I wasn't very good at it. And then out of the blue, this like totally helped me through my life to make me what I am today because right now I work for a company called Stonemore, which is the third biggest death provider. They own like, well, I mean,
they're the third biggest death provider
in the
in the United States or in the worldwide, or
in the United States, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. They
what's your slogan? We can kill anyone. How's that? That's amazing.
It's amazing. It is. It's crazy because there's like the biggest.
What a great name for a band, Death Provider.
I mean, we do cemeteries, funeral homes, caskets,
wow,
the whole thing, right?
Interesting.
Headstones,
for the morbid people that watch my fucking show.
Yeah. So what was weird about it was, here's these companies. The biggest one, by the way, is the Catholics. The Catholics have cemeteries all over the world. And then there's this company called SCI, and then this company I work for called Stonemore now, right now I'm like number 33 in the nation out of almost 4,000 salespeople.
Wow.
So yeah. So I kind of fluctuate, and I made it almost to the top 10 before. So now I'm like, whoa.
So now it's a little bit more lucrative.
Yeah. Now I'm supporting the family and and all that kind of stuff, and I'm very blessed on that kind of thing. But how I started and came up was a whole nother story. Like I'm breaking my teeth out there, not knowing that things suck. But what happened was my friend called me. There's a cemetery in Oakland. It's probably the most famous. It has the most famous people in any cemetery in California, just based upon they have more politicians, more congressmen, more senators, more presidential cabinet members,
so more
robber barons. So there's like historically, there's all of these cathedrals. A cemetery called Mountain View in Oakland, right? So all the who's who, the old robber barons, people building cathedrals and stuff like that. So here I am working for this cemetery where now I'm working with all these prestige families, like not all the time, it was open to the community too, but some of the clientele, the Bechtels, the Kaisers, Attorney General of the United States, I'm helping them design their monuments and helping them, when someone, I had a family like even send me to a quarry to pick out the stone.
Really?
So I got to do some really unique stuff, man. Like just like some really great stories, where you're helping a family along when someone passes away, and you work out a budget for them, and this is what we're going to do. You figure out what the things that they want.
Right.
Yeah. And then trying to make a memorial, something that's in some of these people are like, I didn't have to flip them, man. I had worked with this she's the very first Asian woman, March Fong Yu, to ever be elected to a public office in the United States, right? California's longest running state secretary, who wanted to, just buy these two crypts that were kind of, I'm all, man, you need better than that. Who you are. So next thing you know, I'm designing a sarcophagus for him that's based, kind of designed to look something like Napoleon's, and like, but making sure we could acquire all enough space and lots. Or I'm at work one day and I look, there's this old guy at the counter, his hair's all misheveled and stuff, and mustard on his shirt and stuff. And I look up and he's like, hey, drawing on a napkin. He's like, I want to do this on my family plot. And like, I'm like, come on in. And I'm talking to the guy, and I'm like with him for like a half hour before I realize it's Edwin Meese, the Attorney General of the United States, and I'm like, whoa, what a trip. So now, I'm like, you become friends with him, and, long conversations about stuff,